Hi everyone, welcome back. Thank you for joining me for the third lesson in our Heritage Education series. If you missed our other lessons on Native Americans and the pioneers, be sure to check them out. My name is Amy Sunny and I'm the Director of Education for the Preservation Foundation of Palm Beach. Today we're going to continue learning about the built environment, which consists of all of the buildings built around us. We're going to be learning about the Flagler era today, but first let's quickly recap our last lesson. So if you tuned in last time, hopefully you all remember the name of the architectural style of this structure. For reference, it's the frame vernacular style. And again, frame vernacular was important because it used local needs and local traditions and local materials. So frame vernacular is very specific to the location where it's being constructed. Now the building that's seen here in the photograph is the Little Red Schoolhouse. So hopefully you all remember learning about that last week. And some of the important features that you'll see on the Little Red Schoolhouse is the upside down V, or the gable roof. If you all remember learning about the upside down V, that's the gable roof. You'll see the decorative truss in the gable. You see the sash windows and also the wood siding. Now, if you look here, it's vertical, so that is called the board and batten siding. However, there's also horizontal wood siding, which is called shiplap. So those are just a few of the characteristics of our Little Red Schoolhouse. Today we're going to be learning about the Queen Anne shingle style, which is a much more elaborate style. It's also made out of wood, however. So if you can all turn to page 26 in your workbooks, or perhaps if you just printed out the timeline, and we're going to be adding the Queen Anne shingle style to our timeline. So if you look here on my screen, it's shown in yellow, but go ahead and just use a different color than what you used for frame vernacular. And there's two major events that this time period focuses on. The first is in 1894, Henry Flagler brings the railroad. Now that's around the start of this architectural style. And towards the end of it, around 1912 or 1914, is where the style primarily ends in this area. And that's when Henry Flagler passes away and World War I starts. So everybody take a moment and just go ahead and add that in on your architectural timeline right here. And then make sure you come down into your architectural style key in the lower right-hand corner and add the Queen Anne shingle style. So we're talking about the Flagler era. Now, who knows who this gentleman is? Hopefully everybody said Henry Flagler. Now, Henry Flagler was a very important gentleman. He was a founder of the Standard Oil Company, and he was very famous for building hotels all along the east coast of Florida, and also for the transportation to get to those hotels, or building railroads. So you can see here some examples of those hotels. And you can also see the railroad, or the train, right here coming up in front of the hotel. So Henry Flagler actually built the railroad so that they could access the front door of the hotel. So you can see here in the photograph the Royal Poinciana Hotel. And the train could actually go across the train bridge, which in Palm Beach was actually the North Bridge, and would pull up and drop passengers off right in front of the Royal Poinciana Hotel. Very convenient. Now, at this time with the Flagler era, I want everybody to take a look at the picture here on the right. Can anybody tell me, those of you watching at home, what this lady might be getting ready to do? Now, when I'm with my fourth graders in the classroom, usually everybody says that they think she's a maid because it looks like she might be wearing a maid's outfit, but she's not. She's actually, if you can look at where she's standing in the sand. She's actually at the beach and she's getting ready to go swimming. So in Flagler's time, this is a wool bathing costume, or what was commonly used as a bathing suit in those days. So if you all think about that, ladies, I'm not sure if you'd like to go swimming in a wool bathing costume. Wool can be awfully heavy and quite warm. So as we said, Henry Flagler was a very important gentleman, and Henry Flagler did not like automobile traffic. So at the time that Flagler was here in Palm Beach, there were only two major modes of transportation. Can anybody guess what those were? If you said walking, you would be correct. And also bicycles. So you can also see here that this is what was somewhat known as a Palm Beach chariot, which looks a little bit like a bicycle with a seat. And this is Henry Flagler's personal Palm Beach chariot with his own driver. And you can see his dog riding along with him. This became very popular for taking these chariots up and down the lake trail as a way to get around faster than walking up and down the lake trail. Now, if you'll remember from our lesson last week, the pioneers were living in this area, and this is an example of one of the pioneer structures. Now, you can see some of those same characteristics that we learned about. You can see the wood construction and the horizontal siding, which we said is called shiplap. You can see the upside down V, or the gable roof. And you can also see the palm fronds that were used to thatch the roof. You can see the front porch. However, this is a very rudimentary structure, and I want everybody to think about this type of structure and what we were learning about with the pioneers as we learn about our next style today. So, there was a gentleman by the name of Robert McCormick, and he was an industrialist, which means he was involved in the management of industry. And he was not from the Spice Company, the McCormick Spice Company. He was actually from the Denver Railroad Company. He was a very wealthy gentleman, and he came to Palm Beach, and he actually built a structure called Lac à Mer in 1886. Now, if anybody out there speaks French, you might know that Lac à Mer means lake to sea, and it was named that because the property actually stretched from the lake, or Lake Worth, what we now call the Intracoastal Waterway, all the way to the sea, or to the Atlantic Ocean. So he built Lac à Mer in 1886. Now, if you can all think back, what other structure did we learn about that was built in 1886? Think back to our lesson last week and also what we recapped at the beginning of this lesson. That's right, it was the Little Red Schoolhouse. Now, does this structure look like the Little Red Schoolhouse? I don't think so. It looks pretty different, doesn't it? So I wonder why this structure looks so different from the Little Red Schoolhouse. Let's learn a little bit more. Here's an example of the interior of the structure of Lac à Mer. You can see that it has a recycled mahogany staircase, it has stained glass windows, and it has marble floors. Now, why is this structure so different than the Little Red Schoolhouse or the other pioneer cottages? Well, that would be because Mr. McCormick had money, and he had the funds available to import the materials and to actually bring them down by train and by ship. So he was actually able to get a lot of his materials shipped in so that he could build a more elaborate structure. Even though it's the same time period as the pioneers, he had access to many more materials than the pioneers. Now, does anybody watching at home remember how the pioneers built their structures? They primarily used salvaged materials from shipwrecks. So you can imagine the difference in what materials you could build your house out of if you were having to salvage shipwrecks versus if you could pay to have your materials shipped down from up north. So here's the structure today. This is SEAGULL Cottage, and it's still standing. It's near the Flagler Museum, or Whitehall. It's actually been moved twice in its history. Originally, it was located near the property of the Flagler Museum. It was moved over by the Breakers Hotel to be a cottage for the hotel. And then in 1984, the Preservation Foundation of Palm Beach actually split the building into two pieces and moved it across the Breakers Golf Course and relocated it back to the lake trail. So it sits there now. It was one of the first preservation projects of the Preservation Foundation of Palm Beach. And it's a great example of the Queen Anne shingle style. So let's learn a few more vocabulary words. So if you look here at the example, you can see that there's a really lovely wraparound porch, which was very important because back before air conditioning, people needed to find as many ways as they could to stay cool. So they were able to enjoy this large porch, which helped to provide shade for the building and also give a shady place to be outside. You can also see that the building has dormer windows. It has a bay window over here on the side that we're going to be learning about. It has shingles, and it's made out of wood construction. It also has an asymmetrical design, and there's a tower element on this building that you can't see in this picture. So let's learn about a dormer window, which is a window that projects vertically from a sloping roof. Now you can see a dormer window right here. So how many dormer windows do you see in this photo? There are actually 3. So there's one right here, one in the middle, and one more over here. Now within the dormer windows, maybe you all recognize a type of window that we learned about last time, or sash windows. You can see that there are sash windows in the dormers. Our next type of window is a bay window, which you can see right here on SEAGULL Cottage. Now, some of you may have bay windows in your house. They make great reading nooks. I actually had a bay window in my home growing up, and I love to sit in my bay window and read books. And here you can see it again, right there. And this type of siding might remind you of a certain type of animal skin. Can anybody watching at home think of what that might be? If you said fish, that might be correct. These are fish scale shingles. So they sort of look like the scales on a fish. So just to recap, here's our structure. You can see our dormer windows. You can see our fish scale shingles, our beautiful wraparound porch, and you can see the wood that was used for the roof. You can also see some horizontal shiplap over here, and you can see our sash windows. So here's a photo of Henry Flagler and his 3rd wife, Mary Lily Keenan, in front of SEAGULL Cottage. Now, Mary Lily was 40 years younger than Mr. Flagler, so it was quite a sensation at the time. And it's said that Henry Flagler saw a photo of SEAGULL Cottage in a newspaper and decided that it was so beautiful that he had to come visit Palm Beach. Now, I'm not sure if that's true, but it's a fun story. And when Mr. Flagler got here, he realized that there was a lot of land that hadn't yet been purchased and that it was a beautiful area, and he started buying up land and looking for what he could do with that land. So here you can see SEAGULL Cottage in Flagler's time. Now, if you know SEAGULL Cottage today, you might notice a few differences. If you look here, the building on the back is no longer part of that. That was the carriage house. And there was also a small addition here, and the tower looks a little bit different. So as I said, the building was moved twice. So when it was moved over to the breakers, over to the ocean side, those elements were lost and they weren't restored. But if you look around SEAGULL Cottage, you can also see a lot of differences. What's the biggest difference that you see between this picture from Flagler's era and today? If you look around, there's not very much development. Now, if you know where the SEAGULL Cottage sits, which is right by Whitehall, you know that there is a lot of other buildings all along this part of the lake trail. However, in Flagler's time, this was one of the only structures over here. So Henry Flagler was involved, as we said, in building hotels, and he built the Royal Poinciana Hotel, which at the time was considered to be the largest wooden structure in the world, and that was built in 1894. So I put here on the screen a listing of some of the building supplies that were required to build this building. You can see that it had to use 500,000 bricks. It had 1,200 windows, 1,800 doors, even 2,400 gallons of paint. Now that's a pretty big building. In the beginning, it had 540 rooms and over 3 miles of corridors. And as the building expanded, it grew to have over 1,000 rooms. And it said that the staff members actually had to use bicycles to get around, going up and down the corridors so that they could actually get around the large property. And here's a photo. This is actually taken from up at the roof level. So the guests of the hotel would actually arrive and they would stay on the lower floors, and the staff members that they would bring with them were often housed up in the rafters or up here in the roof. So you can see a certain type of window that we just learned about. Does everybody see the dormer windows? And if you look out from those dormer windows, what do you see? Hopefully you said that you see a dense wilderness, you see lots of trees, you see the water, but you don't see much else because, again, in Flagler's time, there wasn't very much development in this area. And here's another example. This is all Flagler's property. And right here, you can see the Royal Poinciana Hotel. Now, at this point in time, these hotels were sort of like what we would think of as all-inclusive resorts. So you would take the train would let you off right by the hotel, and once you got to the hotel, you would be staying there, you would have all of your meals at the hotel, and all of your entertainment at the hotel as well. So you can see that it grew to be quite a large enterprise, and the property was stretching all the way from the lake all the way to the sea. And you can see in the background another one of Flagler's hotels that we're going to learn about. That's the Palm Beach Inn. It was built in 1896 because the Royal Poinciana Hotel, even though it had 1,000 rooms, was always full and they needed more space. So the Palm Beach Inn was built in 1896, and that later became known as the Breakers Hotel. Now, in 1902, Henry Flagler built Whitehall, his own personal residence. He commissioned the architects Carrere and Hastings to build this Beaux-Arts structure, and it has over 75 rooms and over 100,000 square feet of space. It's a beautiful structure. You all might know it today as the Flagler Museum. And remember, this was only Henry Flagler's winter residence. So he didn't live here all year long, typically about 6 weeks every season. And here it is today as the Flagler Museum. So I said that the Palm Beach Inn became known as the Breakers Hotel in 1901, and you can see it here again in the photo, right there. Now, this structure actually was built out of wood, just like the Royal Poinciana, and it had several fires, unfortunately. So the first fire burned the structure down. It was rebuilt again and unfortunately burned down again. So when they built the third version of the Breakers, they decided that they wouldn't build it out of wood anymore, they would build it out of stone, and that was built in 1926. It's also built in a different style than the earlier structures because the earlier Queen Anne shingle styles weren't as popular, so this was built in a more Mediterranean style, which if you tune into our next lesson, you'll be able to learn more about. Now, the Breakers Hotel is still standing today. I'm sure that if you've been to Palm Beach, you've been able to go visit that. However, the Royal Poinciana Hotel, unfortunately, is no longer standing. It was torn down. And I want you all to think about what we learned, how many materials went into that structure, all of the windows, the doors, the bricks. And all of that material, when it was torn down, went into a landfill, which was really unfortunate. It's unfortunate that the building wasn't able to be saved so that we could all still enjoy it today. So we were talking about the fact that the pioneers were still in this area at the same time that Flagler was building these grand hotels and bringing the railroad. Now this is an image of Route Trail. You can still go on Route Trail today in Palm Beach and see some earlier frame vernacular cottages. And you can see here an example of one of those frame vernacular cottages. You can see the decorative truss in the gable, the wood siding, the gable roof. You can see a front porch here, and some of the pioneers that are on Route Trail. Now I said that the hotel was kind of like an all-inclusive, so guests had to be able to have some sort of entertainment because they didn't have Disney World to go visit. So one of the ways that the guests were entertained when they would come down to stay at Flagler's Hotel was by going on an excursion on Jungle Road. So for 25 cents, guests could pay to have a guide take them along Jungle Road. They would stop and have tea and lemonade halfway through. And at the end of their trek down Jungle Road, they would end here. Now, does anybody know what this is? If you said that this was Alligator Joe's Alligator Farm, you would be correct. Now, Alligator Joe's was located where the Everglades Club is today, and people could actually come here to watch Alligator Joe wrestle with alligators, which was a skill that he learned from the Native Americans in the area. And this was an early tourist attraction. People would actually come here to see these animals because they had never seen an alligator before. I think if you're coming down from up north, you've never seen an alligator, and they would actually really enjoy getting to learn about some of the Florida animals. So let's just do a quick recap. Does anybody remember the name of this architectural style? Hopefully you said the Queen Anne shingle style. And let's go over some of the features that we learned about for that style. You can see the wraparound front porch right here. You can see dormer windows, the bay window, the fish scale shingles. You can see wood shingles here for the roof. You can see a gable roof as well, which we learned about. And there's also some horizontal wood shiplap siding. Now, if you're able to follow along at home, we have a fun activity that we can post on our website. You'll be able to find the Sanborn map of Palm Beach. Now, Sanborn maps were a really great tool. They were used by the fire insurance companies to rate buildings. However, the maps for our purposes aren't necessary for insurance purposes anymore, but we use them now as great historical documents. So these insurance maps would actually tell us an awful lot about the structures. They might tell us the type of building material, the number of stories. They would give you the outline and the footprint of the building. So we're able to learn a lot about our historic buildings by using these fire insurance maps. So we have a great activity, again, posted on the Preservation Foundation's website, where you can go in and explore one of these Sanborn maps. So I hope that you all had a great time learning today about the Queen Anne shingle style, and I hope that you'll tune into our next lesson. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.